The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for the Introducing Hobo's MX Pendant and TidbiT Bluetooth data loggers. I am Eileen Sandher. I've been with Onset just about 20 years. I'm a senior product application specialist and, of course, doing inside sales. Just to keep in mind, the presentation will be recorded and we will have it available after the webinar. I'll also be following up for you. We do have questions and answers that we will try to address during the webinar. If we don't get to your question, please type it in and I will follow up with you in the next day or by next week, certainly, or you can call us. Company overview. Onset has been in business since 1981. We are the recognized global leader in environmental monitoring solutions and data loggers with a very recognizable name of Hobo. We are a lean manufacturing facility in Bourne, Massachusetts on Cape Cod. Your presenter today is our Product Marketing Manager, Scott Ellis. I have worked with Scott in our applications department, and he is currently a Product Marketing Manager for new product introductions, and he's going to be guiding you through this webinar today.
Great, thanks, Eileen. Okay, so welcome everybody, and as Eileen said, feel free to type in questions and we'll try to address those as things come along here. So welcome to the next generation of water temperature loggers here. We've got some new TidbiTs and some new Pendant loggers. As you can see, it's really kind of a new cool design, you know, with some better mounting options, and just about all the products now have replaceable batteries, which I know has been a big ask for folks. So for the agenda for this, we're just going to do a quick overview, look at some of the key features. If you're not familiar with our Bluetooth technology, I'd like to show you how that's going to work with your mobile device using Hobo Mobile. Then we'll dive in, kind of take a deep dive into the detailed specifications, some of the additional new features that we've added here, touch on HoboLink real quickly, which is a cloud storage, and again, we'll save time at the end here to address your questions, but again, feel free to type those in as we go. I've got a quick poll question that I want to throw up here for you, so let me just get this going. But just curious, what have you been using so far? So we'll go ahead and throw that out there, and if you want to chime in with your answer, that would be fabulous. Looks like we got a couple newbies out there, which is great. People using other vendors, we're looking to convert you, come over to the new technology, and looks like we got a lot of existing Hobo users, so we'll be looking forward to you know, bringing you up to speed on some of this new technology here. Looks like we'll just kind of wrap this up here, so let me close that and then we'll share it with you. So as you can see, we're pretty heavy-handed in the Hobo data loggers, obviously, and then folks using some other loggers and not using any yet. So hopefully we can, as I said, bring you up to speed on everything. So let's. Here's the new loggers. Let me get this out of the way. So we've released four loggers. They're called the MX2200 series. We have the MX2201, which is the Pendant Temp, which sells for $54. There's the 2202, which is the Pendant Temp Lite, which sells for $69. The TidbiT Temp 400, which is the MX2203, and that sells for $129. And then the TidbiT Temp 5000, which is the MX2204, and that sells for $139. where the 400 and 500 or 5,000 comes from, that's actually their depth rating to be able to tell the differences there. But again, we'll get into the real details here in a little bit. So the Bluetooth advantage. Why would you switch over to Bluetooth Low Energy? And I might refer to this as BLE for short at times throughout this presentation here. But not everybody deploys these data loggers underwater. So if they're maybe in hard to access locations, maybe up in a tree or in a bird's nest, you'd be able to wirelessly access the data loggers. Typically, you need to be within about 100 feet of these. I guess the single largest question that came up and has come up is, will these communicate underwater? So the typical 2.4 gigahertz, megahertz bandwidth will not. So in my testing, I took some of these out to a river and had them hanging off a canoe. They were probably about 5 or 6 inches in the water. I could connect to it sometimes. Sometimes the connection would disconnect when I was offloading it. So there is definitely the water. And actually, thanks, Philip. Yeah, will it communicate through about 20 inches of soil? It's really going to depend upon the soil and how much moisture is in there as well. And unfortunately, I think some of these things we're going to have to try. I've had, again, I've tested them in like a cup of water and it's communicated, but I've had one at the bottom of my pool and I couldn't communicate to it. So, these are some things that we'll need to obviously test out there. But obviously, one of the advantages, is you can download to your smartphone or tablet, so you have all your data right there. With the past products, we know sometimes the optical communications could be a little flaky when you're in direct sunlight, or the older TidbiTs had nubs on them that sometimes would get broken. If they hit a rock or something like that. We'll take a look at HoboMobile here in a little bit, but you'll see how you'll be able to kind of really view your data in the palm of your hand. And then there's some new features that we've added in here with a start and stop button and an alarm indication. And we actually brought back the ability to wrap over the oldest data, which the previous product line did not have. And you do have the ability to automatically upload your data to the internet from HoboMobile to HoboLink.com, which is a free cloud storage, which I'll also touch on in that. So in terms of the Pendant, what are some of the key features? It's obviously a more rugged design. It's easier to mount. You now have tabs both at the top and the bottom, both for zip ties and or screws. These are rated to 100 feet. The accuracy is plus or minus 0.5 degrees C. There is a better light sensor in here, which I will certainly dive into that into more details on the new light sensor. There is a user replaceable battery. There's a ton more memory with 96K of data measurements. Again, they're low cost. And then there's a Pick Me feature, which will turn on and off the Bluetooth. And I'll get into reasons why you might want to leave Bluetooth on and maybe turn it off. And there is an alarm indication actually on both products now. In the past, the Pendant Temp was the only one that had that alarm indication. So as far as the TidbiT, it's in a rugged rubberized housing, basically meant to protect it. It is removable and replaceable. So if you have an application where you're trying to fit one of these loggers into a smaller area, you can take the boot off, for example. Where you see the Hobo logo on there, there's actually a magnet in there which that will activate Bluetooth. So yeah, Bluetooth is the only way to offload and communicate to these loggers. So there's no USB port on them, and there's no optical communications like the previous product line. So you will be communicating Bluetooth only. Again, we have the two different ranges here. So one that goes to 120 meters or 400 feet, the other that goes to 1,500 meters or 5,000 feet. The one that goes to the 120 meters does have a user replaceable battery, which in my opinion is a pretty big upgrade for this product line. There is a water detect Bluetooth power savings mode, which I'll go on into in more detail. These also have 96,000 measurements that it can take, and they also do have the alarm indication, so you can set an upper and lower limit. And I didn't touch on it. These are a little better accuracy at plus or minus 0.2 degrees C. So for those of you who are new or maybe have not worked with any of our Bluetooth loggers at this point, I'd like to take you through what some of the screens look like in Hobo Mobile. So it's an app. It is good for both Android and iOS, or your Apple devices. There it is there. Your phones and tablets must have Bluetooth 4.0 or higher. Bluetooth, it's also known as low energy or Bluetooth Smart. And it's going to allow you to configure your logger, download the data, view a graph, share that data in a couple different file formats, and you can then send that to apps on your mobile device like Numbers or Excel, or send it to Google Drive or Dropbox, or you can email the data to yourself. Again, you can automatically upload the data to HoboLink if you choose, and you can do additional data analysis with our traditional HoboWare Pro and free HoboWare desktop programs. So you can share that .hobo file, so you can then work with data in HoboWare. So the first screen you're going to come to is what we call the Hobo screen, and basically this is going to show all the data loggers that are within range of your mobile device. And if, for example, this Pick Me feature, when you push a button, the logger will jump up to the top of the list and turn green. Next here, you'll see any of the data loggers that have an alarm indication on them, and then we have some of these other loggers down here that do not have alarm indications on them, so they'll just kind of show up in the list. And what you'll do is just tap on any of these to connect to it. And once you've connected to it, there's a couple different things that you can do here. You can configure your logger. You can read out the logger. You can show the status details. So if your loggers during a deployment, you want to see how it was set up, you can start and stop logging. You can page the logger, which will actually turn on the two LEDs for 4 seconds on the logger. This is actually kind of convenient because if you have a bunch of loggers right in front of you and you want to know which one you're communicating to, you can turn that on. And then you can also set the logger's password as well. And setting the password, putting a password in just means that nobody else would be able to communicate to that logger. So if you're in a high traffic area, I know, for example, some museums out there where not necessarily somebody's going to come through and communicate to the loggers, but having that password in place is definitely good. So a bunch of questions here coming in regarding that this is just a BLE logger, and at this point, where we stand is that you'll need an Android or an Apple device to be able to communicate to these. We have kicked off a research project, an R&D project, where we are looking into the capability of utilizing the Bluetooth on your computers. So on a Windows, actually Windows 10 desktop or laptop type program. So that is something that's going to be coming. I don't have a time frame on when that's going to be coming, so I'd say stay tuned. We're probably, this is October. We're probably a good 6 months out, but that is something that we are actively working on. So the configuration screen, you'll see that this is sort of a similar setup to HoboWare, where you're going to come through and set the name of your logger. You can actually group these loggers for better data management. You can set the logging interval, which will automatically calculate the estimated duration that the logger would run for. You can set up your start options. So if you're familiar with doing a delayed start by date and time, or a push button start, or setting it up at the next logging interval, you can do that as well. There are stop options with this particular logger. So you can have it stop when the memory's full. You can have it wrap over the oldest data, or you can have the logger stop at a particular date and time. Again, you can set a visual alarm indication, so if it goes outside of range, the red LED will blink. And I'll touch on this, but this is where you'll manage the Bluetooth settings on the logger itself. So you can actually turn it off to get a longer battery life, but you do need to push a button to activate Bluetooth again. And then there's some logging modes in here where over your logging interval, for example, you can take an average, a min, max, average, or standard deviation measurement over that time frame if you want to as well. And so once you've downloaded your data, the data file screen will show you all of the data that's come in and that's been downloaded. There is a status indicator. If you do happen to be using HoboLink, there's a status over here saying that this has gone up to the cloud. And to look at a larger graph or share your data, you're going to tap on one of these graphs. And from here, you can zoom in and zoom out with finger gestures by pinching and spreading your fingers. You can tap and hold down to see specific readings. And then when it comes to sharing the data, the share screen gives you the options to have this in an Excel format, the XLSX, a CSV, a text, the Hobo file, the HoboWare format file, and then you can also just send an image of the graph. And what that looks like when you do go to share your data, depending upon your mobile device and what apps you have installed on there, you'll then have options to what apps that'll send data to. For example, I use Google Drive all the time. So I send stuff up to Google Drive, but I know a lot of folks that'll email it to themselves, or I won't do this on my phone, but on the iPad, I'll actually send the data over to Numbers or Excel and look at some of the data that way. So there's definitely a couple different options if you want to work with your data right on the device or get it off to another play. Let's see what we got here. So one more poll question. Let me get this going here. And where do you plan to deploy your water temperature loggers? So let's see where you guys are going to be putting these things. And that gives me a chance to get a quick sip of water. All right, lots of streams and rivers and lakes. So probably shallow depths, I'm assuming, for the most part. So all right, looks like we got the majority of the folks here. Let me just go ahead and close this and we'll share with you what we got. So definitely a good also soil temperatures. I agree, Randy. We left that off. So sorry about that. For those of you who are deploying in air and soil, sorry about that. We'll get better answers on the poll questions next time. And thank you for typing that in there. Oops, I'm not going to reboot the computer now. There we go. So let's kind of dive into the detailed specifications here. In terms of the logger itself, you have the mounting tabs on the top and the bottom. It's both set up to use either zip ties, cable ties, or you can put a screw through there. There are the status LED is on the left, so that's going to blink while the logger's logging. And if you do happen to set an alarm, that red LED will begin blinking once it goes inside of range, or goes outside of range, I should say. There is a push button in the middle of these two products, and that will actually activate Bluetooth. When you first get these loggers, they will actually have Bluetooth turned off, and we do that to save battery life. And then once you go to set these up through the configuration screen, you will have the ability to then leave Bluetooth on all the time, or again turn it off and activate it by pushing the button. And what that button will do is it activates Bluetooth for about 2 minutes, and then it goes back to sleep if you have not configured the logger or anything. The alarm that's on here, it's just an LED indication. So if you say you set an upper range of 70 degrees and a lower range of 50 degrees, if it goes outside of that range at any point during the deployment, that red LED will begin blinking. So good to see if you do have some critical set points for that, then you can come back and see that the logger may have gone outside of range. So, and of course, on the Pendant Temp Light, you have the light sensor over here as well. In terms of replacing the battery, with the Pendants, we're still using a CR2032 battery. And basically on the back of the logger, you're going to push down and twist. And so there's actually an O-ring in there, and there's a nice little locking mechanism to keep the back together and keep it waterproof. And then basically just take out the battery and put the new one in. So in terms of the head-to-head comparison here, good. So a couple questions on the Bluetooth and the battery life here. So first, the ranges are very similar to the new and the older products. The accuracy is roughly the same, but it is more accurate across the entire range. So it will cover half a degree C from -20 to 50 degrees C. The response time is a little slower, just a hair slower. And that's basically due to the air in the case that needs to change. They are both rated to 100 feet. As I said before, there's a ton more memory on here with 96,000 measurements. And then the battery life. So a typical battery life is a year with the Bluetooth always on at a 1 minute logging interval. Now, obviously there are other considerations. So, the cold can be a factor and all that sort of stuff. And then if you do turn off Bluetooth, and again, to turn that back on, you're just going to push the button in the middle. But we're anticipating at least a 2-year battery life. Honestly, I think it might run a little longer from some of the tests I've been doing over the past 6 months. But it definitely gives you some flexibility in both cases here. And then the price is $54, which is kind of right in the middle. Well, not exactly in the middle, but close, of the two existing pendants that are out there now. Oh, and there's all the little arrows there. Okay, I did put arrows in. So let's talk about light. So the first thing that you're going to see is there's a pretty dramatic change in the light range, and I'll touch on that in just a second here. What I will say is that before, although from logger to when one logger was deployed in the same light, they were pretty repeatable. But with the pendant, with the older pendants, the UAs, from logger to logger, I know many of you found that the measurements would be, you know, off pretty dramatically from logger to logger, and by far, you know, we never stated an accuracy before. So, you know, we're still looking at, you know, plus or minus 10%, and some of that is going to vary. Well, I've got that in the next slide. So, combined measurements, 49,000 combined measurements. And again, same deal with the battery life there, 1 to 2 years, depending upon whether you're doing Bluetooth. And this is $69, so just a hair more expensive. In terms of natural light levels, outdoor conditions, direct sunlight, you're typically expecting somewhere over 1,000 lux. Full daylight, the difference is direct sunlight, it's actually beating down on you, whereas, you know, you might be just out on a sunny day, but you're not getting hit by the sun with the full sunlight. So you can see there's a pretty good drop off here just as a point of reference. And again, those are the kind of the ranges that we're looking at here. When we went to look at this new light sensor, we actually found one that is closer to the response of the human eye versus what the pendants did before. So I think you know, you still want to sort of calibrate these to a source. You know, I know a lot of folks who are doing these light studies in estuaries and seagrass and whatnot. You're usually going to, you know, calibrate them to a way more accurate PAR sensor, you know, before you deploy these and you know, and see what the readings look like afterwards. So when you're looking at this, there's the sort of normal response and then sort of the response that we're going to see. As many of you know, traditional light sensors, they've kind of got the bubble there, so you can get the light at much further out angles. You know, and this just has a flat surface, so that's where you're going to lose some of the accuracy there of when you have things coming in at, you know, say it really starts to drop off when the angle's out at about 40 degrees. So you know, those are just some things that you're going to want to, you know, take into account. We compared all of our readings to a, you know, an off-the-shelf lux meter that, you know, that's out there to kind of come up with this curve and looking at all the different angles there. So hopefully this will help folks who have had to go through and manually, you know, do a ton of calibration with the previous generation of products here. So the light sensor looks pretty good so far with all the testing that we've been doing here. So let's take a look at the new TidbiTs. Again, we've tried to, there was a lot of feedback when we were in development here that, you know, as much as the existing design was nice, it was kind of tough to mount. And that's where you've got these the tabs on the top and the bottom, and you know, we scattered you know, just search the Google machine out there for a bunch of images. It's great to see how many folks actually have images of the products deployed in all of your papers and that sort of stuff. So we got a really good feel of how things are being deployed. So between the mounting tabs on the top, whether it's screws or through zip ties, you know, this should definitely give you an easier way to mount these. And again, these rubberized boots do come off if you want to, if you do want to take those off and just deploy the loggers by themselves. So the two screws that you're going to see on here, those are stainless steel screws. This is the water detect feature, which I'll touch on here in a little bit, but basically it's going to turn Bluetooth on and off by measuring the presence of water going across those two screws. So it gives you kind of another power savings mode. I think it's going to be pretty handy. On the TidbiT Temp 400, it's the MX2203, this does have a user replaceable battery, and basically you take the logger out of the boot and you twist the back of the logger off, and then we're using a CR2477 battery. So it's got a little more juice, a little more oomph than the 2032. And then as you can see, there's a ridge on the side of the logger, and that's going to align it back into the boot correctly for you. Let's see if we did arrows here too. We got arrows, lots of arrows. So when taking a look at, I pulled up both the WaterTemp Pro and the TidbiT because there's a couple differences here. So for water temperature measurements, the new TidbiTs actually do they'll go up to 50 degrees C, which is better than what the existing TidbiTs did. Although if you're deploying these in the air, they only go down to -20, and what I would recommend is taking a look at our MX 2300 series. So if you need air temperatures down to -40, definitely take a look at that other product line, as that will be able to meet your needs there. And it's both self-contained as well as we've got probe versions of that. So be sure to hit the website to check that out. Logger's gotten pretty much more accurate across the entire range. So again, just going to better sensor technology. The response time, it's a little better in air, a little worse in water. Pretty much doubled your memory. And then in terms of the battery life, really the big thing here is that it's user replaceable. So with the other two products, either the TidbiT was a throwaway with a 5-year life, or the WaterTemp Pro had a 6-year battery life there. So with this one, with Bluetooth always on, we're expecting about 3 years. And then with Bluetooth always off, you're expecting about 5 years. And this unit is $129. So right within the range of the existing products that we have out there. In terms of the TidbiT Temp 5000, the MX2204, pretty much everything's the same in terms of the range and the accuracy. Response time is definitely better. The difference here is this logger is completely coated, encapsulated in epoxy, similar to the old TidbiTs. Whereas the other three products that have user replaceable batteries have some air in them, which is why they don't have the same response time. Goes much deeper, so if you need something more rugged, it's going to go up to 5,000 feet, and we've doubled up on the memory here. The thing here is it's a non-replaceable battery, so you're going to be expecting this 3 to 5 year battery life, and this guy sells for $139. So let's take a look at some of the other new features that we have in here. So in terms of, and you may not be familiar with all of our MX products. We've got a couple indoor temperature and humidity loggers and a CO2 logger, and then some outdoor temperature and humidity loggers. And with this next generation of loggers, we've been bringing back some of the features that either were never in the products or like Wrap One Full, for example, got dropped in the last product line. You can start and stop logging on a push button. You have the visual alarms. And so you can set that so the LED will stop blinking when it goes back in the range or when the logger is reconfigured. Statistics logging is something where you can do the max, min, average, and standard deviation logging. The burst, for example, you can actually go through and say, if I'm going to log at a 4-hour logging rate, but once I get above 70 degrees, I'm going to start logging once a second until that goes back below, say, 68 degrees, and then I'll go back to a 4-hour logging interval. So kind of a cool way to maximize some of those 96,000 measurements. The The one thing we didn't bring through for this product line was the multi-rate logging, which I got an indication that not a lot of folks used. You could set up and say log for this amount of time at this rate, and then log amount this time at this rate, and you can only do that about 8 times. If you did use that feature, I would say take a look at burst logging, because I think that's maybe a better solution for you. So definitely take a look at that. And then page the logger. So again, you can tap and it will turn on the logger's LEDs for 4 seconds so you can see which one you're communicating to. The Pick Me feature. This is really kind of cool. So you push the button on any of the 4 loggers, and basically that logger is going to jump right to the top of the hobo scene. Super useful. Actually, we developed it here mainly for us because, geez, we got, where I sit, I'm within earshot of about 300 or 400 data loggers, and you can imagine how hard that is trying to find your logger within that screen there. So you just push that button and boop, pops right up to the top, and then you can tap on it and configure it or download the data from there. So definitely convenient if you're going to be programming a ton of these sitting at your desk and putting them into a delayed start or something like that, and then tossing them in a box and having somebody else go deploy them. So that's certainly something to take advantage of. The power savings mode. So again, you can have Bluetooth always on. The advantage of that is obviously wireless communications within 100 feet when it's out of water in order to access the logger. And then the Bluetooth always off, you need to obviously walk up to it and push the button to activate that. But it does give you the longer battery life. But on the 2 TidbiT models here, again, I talked briefly about the power savings mode. And when you turn this on, basically it'll turn Bluetooth on and off by measuring the presence of water. So, you know, as we talked about the design of this product and kind of going through it, and we're like, okay, well, we're going to have to pull this thing out of the water anyways, and we want to try to get a longer battery life. So wouldn't it be great if as soon as you pulled it out, it automatically started advertising Bluetooth and I could communicate to it? So that's kind of where this feature came from. Both screws must be in the water essentially to complete the circuit. This automatically checks every 15 seconds to see if the presence of water is there or not. There is a water detection event recorded with the date and time in the data file. So I know sometimes folks are looking at dry or stream beds that may dry up. By using this feature, you'll also be able to see when there's no water there or when there is. So you know, that's certainly a new benefit here. And temperature is recorded at a separate logging rate. So, you know, if you're recording every 15 minutes or every half an hour or so, something like that, the water detection feature works independently of that. So be sure to check that out and try to take advantage of that, especially for folks who are deploying, you know, year round, and you might be out on a boat and you know, you just pull the logger up out of the water and boom, it goes right on. So the Pendant does not have that, whereas the two TidbiTs do have this feature. All right, so I've talked a little about HoboLink here, and so HoboLink is our cloud account. Some of you may be familiar with the RX3000, which is kind of our weather station, and that automatically sends data up cellular, Wi-Fi, or Ethernet up to our cloud account, and you can log in and see what's going on. It's free. It's something you come in, you create an account. You don't need to register a device. What you'll do is once you've created your account, you'll go into settings within Hobo Mobile, you'll tap on HoboLink. You'll turn on the upload data, and then, oops, and then you'll put in your password information. And once you have done that, you hit done. And then what will happen is any of the data that you've downloaded to Hobo Mobile that's on your device, that will begin uploading it up into HoboLink. And there's two sections up here. If you did happen to use our RX3000, this would be up here in the remote monitoring devices. But all of your MX data will come in here. And as you can see, I was kind of mapping my house with some temperature and humidity loggers. The nice thing about this, and I know a lot of times folks will either take their data and take the individual files, export those to Excel, and then bring them in and combine them, or import everything into some other statistical program or something like this. The advantage here is that you can go through and say, okay, let me go ahead and I want to select the basement, the bedroom, the craft room, the living room, and the outside garage, and export that data. And what that does is it pulls it all into one file for you. So before you would have been dealing with 4 or 5 individual data files. So now you can kind of pull that all together, which is what I was just describing. So the other nice thing about this too is, let's say you've got a bunch of folks who are working on the same project. Let's say you've got a bunch of grad students out there who are offloading these loggers for you, for example. They could all have the same HoboLink account, and all of that data would just go into one centrally stored location. You can create custom searches that you can save. So, give me all the data from all of my temperature loggers between January and February, or over the past 6 months, or something like that. You can customize your formats. It has the same formats as what HoboWare does. The difference here is that there actually is a HoboWare CSV format. So if you do want to take data from 4, 5, 6 different loggers and import that into HoboWare, you can actually do that all at once, as opposed to opening up 6 different data files within HoboWare and copying and pasting them and all that sort of good fun stuff. HoboLink is not built into HoboWare. It's actually, you're going to go through your browser. So just open up a browser and go to hobolink.com, and you'll log in there to create your account there, essentially. And then the data will come out of Hobo Mobile. It will go into HoboLink, and then you can basically export that data and import it into HoboWare. I know it sounds like a mouthful. It's actually not that hard. I've created a slide deck here for, Eileen's laughing at me, but I've put together a slide deck for our sales team and our tech support team, which they have that available to them, which I'm sure we could make available to show folks how to do. But it actually is pretty easy. And finally, the last thing, and we have one of our clients who are using the 2300 series, where they schedule data delivery. And basically, she has people who are downloading data once a week, or actually, I think it's a couple times a week. And then once every 2 weeks, she gets an email sent to her, and basically with all of that data. So again, it's kind of a cool, convenient way to get that information. And you can also push it to an FTP site as well. So definitely check that out. And again, talk to Eileen and some of us here about how that functionality might work. Future plans. What about our old products? What's going to happen to these guys? Where are they going? They're not going anywhere. I can tell you that right now. These products are going to continue to be built, sold, supported, all that sort of good stuff. So if there's, I know that some folks aren't technically allowed to use their personal devices at work. So that may be a limiting factor of moving over to the Bluetooth loggers. Until we're able to maybe come out with a desktop solution so that you can communicate through a laptop. So the product line's still out there. We do not anticipating these going away. We've been building these for what, 10, 15 years now, something crazy like that. So they've been around for a while, and they're definitely not going anywhere. So unless there's a component end of life that comes up, but we don't anticipate that happening at this point. So the old products are still out there. I know a couple folks had emailed some questions in earlier. What's going to happen to these guys? So they're still going to be out there, not to worry. And let's take your questions here. I've kind of been grabbing these as we've gone. So let me just look through the list here real quick. Let's see what we got going here. So we've talked about the cost and the Bluetooth. Yeah, so we had Abigail sent in a question, and a number of you have sent in questions too about the whole thing with the soil and the communication of Bluetooth and all that sort of stuff. Again, it is something that you're probably going to have to try. I had it off the side of a canoe, and sometimes it would download, sometimes it wouldn't. So definitely test that out. In terms of the soil, I had one in my garden, and it was probably down about a foot or so, and I was able to communicate to it from basically my knees. So you're talking about a couple feet off. Again, it's something that you'll definitely have to try. Daniel, I'm not sure. Let's take that offline. We'll check that out. Randy, how sensitive is the water detect Bluetooth feature? Will it trip with moisture if it does fully saturated submerged environment to register? Yeah, so I've had some of these deployed like on my deck and whatnot, and it gets pretty humid here at times, or we have the morning dew and stuff like that. That hasn't tripped the water detect feature, and actually it even in a full blown downpour, it really hasn't tripped the feature. I mean, the logger really does need to be submerged. Now, if you're putting it into like a marshy sort of soil type thing, again, it depends upon how wet it is, and if both of those contacts are being hit at the same time, essentially. So it's definitely something to try out, but yeah, it should be a nice feature there. I'm just gonna throw up some contact information here while I'm going through some of these questions here. So in terms of Tony had a question, how do we free up space on the logger? So every time you go to start the logger, it's gonna clear the memory. So once you've done a download, then that will reset it. Both Abigail and Tony had a similar question. When you go to replace the battery, or if an O-ring, or just say for whatever reason out there that the logger happens to stop for whatever reason, or you go to replace the battery, the data is going to hold on to that data until you basically put in a new battery and you're able to offload it again. So it's a non-volatile EEPROM memory, so you shouldn't lose any of your data there. Barry, how do you get a username and password for HoboLink? You create one. So there is right here, create an account. So go to HoboLink.com and create an account, and that's where you're going to get that there. Whoa, just went blowing through the slide deck there. Hey. All right, we got a bunch of other questions that are coming in here. Let me, what do we got here? Water detect, corrosion, salt water. Excellent question. That just came up yesterday. So as I said, they are stainless steel screws. We don't expect those to corrode. I mean, there could be some corrosion, long term, but not to the point where it's going to completely fall apart, or those screws actually go right down into the board, which is another thing. You don't want to take those out because then your logger's not waterproof. So I would definitely leave those in there. Can you set? What do we got here? Can you set a water detect flag that does not turn? Yeah, so can you set a water detect flag that does not turn Bluetooth on or off, but will show in the data that it went through in and out of the water? So Melissa, those are tied directly to each other. We talked about doing those independently, but at the end of the day, I think it was more concerned about battery conservation. So yeah, those two are tied hand to hand. So you want to turn that on. But then again, unless you're talking just a little bit of water, you're probably not going to be able to communicate to the logger through that water anyways. So you should probably be all set there. Can the offloaded data be stored on your mobile device until you are within cell or have? Yeah. So can the offloaded data be stored to your mobile device until you are within cellular service or have Wi-Fi available? Yeah, so all of this data is going to be stored locally to your phone or your tablet anyways, regardless of whether you use HoboLink or not. And then once you get back, if you're out in the sticks and you don't have cell coverage or whatever, there actually is a Wi-Fi upload only on Wi-Fi option as well that you can turn on. So, but yeah, as soon as you're back within range, you'll just want to open up the app and that will start sending data up. There is a retry, so where you'll see the little cloud thing, if there's a exclamation point, just tap on it and it will actually retry to send that data up once you're within range. These files are pretty small, so I don't anticipate that they're going to, eat into any of your data usage or anything along those lines. Let's see what we got out here. Many smartphones are now waterproof. Have you tried to download with a submerged smartphone? Julianne, I have not. I don't. I can't put a $600 phone into. I just can't. It's a thing with me. I can't do it. So what I have done when I was on my camping trip, I had a freezer Ziploc baggie. If you go out to Amazon or the Google machine out there and type in waterproof cases, there's tons of little bags out there for anywhere from $9 to $20. Definitely look at the phone and before you just go stick it in the water, unless you've already done it. And you can let me know or let us know if you have. But yeah, I mean, most of those phones are splash proof as opposed to like truly waterproof.
I wanted to chime in there. If you are in a situation where you have to download underwater, like if you're thinking of a coral reef study and you don't want to remove those, we would probably recommend something different. So you could do the waterproof shuttle with the original TidbiT or WaterTemp Pro V2 data logger. So anytime you're thinking about an application or that you want to start or a project, which the best data logger would be, give us a call. We're happy to help, and we can guide you whether you want to try some Bluetooth in certain areas, maybe combine it with some of the underwater data loggers that you can go underwater. And you have another question, I think.
Yep. Great. Yeah. Excellent point, Eileen. Yeah. I mean, like I said before, the older loggers aren't going anywhere, and that waterproof shuttle is what, the 30 feet, 90 feet? 66. 66 feet that it's waterproof to. So definitely check that out as an option as well. So it looks like we have kind of encountered. Oh, wait, here's one. Oh, shoot, that just moved. Hang on. Guys, just encounter algae growth on color. So Kurt has a question. Encountered algae growth on current tidbits. Is there a way to protect the new ones? So with that boot, that's going to protect it to a certain extent, and you can just kind of scrape some things off there. The other nice thing too is that you don't necessarily need to get all the algae off to be able to offload your data logger now. Like before, you had the optical communications, and you needed to get those nubs needed to be available so you can put it into the waterproof shuttle or the optical reader, whereas you won't have to do that with this. So it may not be as important to keep these things clean. Yeah, so Zach, we use our logger for river temperature monitoring. Sometimes we are concerned that the logger comes out of the water when the river flow fluctuates. If we turn the Bluetooth off when submerged feature, would it also mark when it comes out of the water? Yeah, so it's going to mark it when it comes out of the water and when it goes back into the logger. It's done as an event within the data file, and basically it'll show up as a triangle on your graph. So yeah, it will truly give you when it's gone into the water and when it's gone out. So you could actually just take and, for example, just export that data, and then you could get like your total in the water time or total out of the water time too. So that certainly can be done. So yeah, I'd definitely take a look at that feature. So on that note, it looks like we've hit everybody's questions here, and if for whatever reason I missed something, Eileen will circle back with you guys. And yeah, I want to say thank you very much for joining us. I hope you definitely check out the new loggers on the website. If there are more questions on this whole HoboLink thing and HoboMobile and all that sort of good stuff, definitely reach out to us. Well, thank you, Julian.
And thank you all for joining us. I will be following up, as I said, and feel free to call me or email me directly. We're happy to help, and thanks for joining us.
Have a fabulous day.